You are watching the chapter number 6, which is also the final chapter of the Blender modeling course. In this chapter, we'll learn to model a treasure chest with all the knowledge of 3D modeling that we are having till now, and apart from this, we'll also be learning about some new techniques, and a special thing which makes this chapter even more advanced is the inclusion of the rigid body physics. We'll be understanding about this amazing concept in today's chapter, and we'll use it to create an animation of some coins falling into the treasure chest. And yes, if you are completely new to the Blender modeling course, then do check out the previous 5 chapters by clicking on the link of playlist that I have added in the description of this video. Now to begin with, our first step will be to have a reference image in order to create the 3D model of a treasure chest. And for this purpose, I did a Google search for some good reference images of a treasure chest and got all these image results. Out of these, I think that this one will be a good reference image for the treasure chest. So I'll download this, and also I've dropped the link of this image in the description of this video. So if you want, you can download the image by using that link. Now we are back in Blender, and to use that image as the reference image, we first need to add an image editor window. So for this, I'll keep my cursor over here, then right click and select horizontal split. After this, I'll take this line to the middle and then left click in order to create a new window. After this, click here and select the image editor. Now to open that image, click on the open button, open that particular folder where you save the reference image, then select it and click on open image. After this, the reference image will get added in the image editor. Now coming to the modeling part, we'll first make the upper body of the treasure chest, which if you look closely is semi-cylindrical in shape. As a result, I will first of all remove this cube by pressing X, and then we'll add a cylinder object. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select cylinder. Now to create a semi-cylinder for the top part, press tab to enter the edit mode, then we'll rotate this in the X axis by 90 degrees, and after this go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, then turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z, and we'll be selecting all these vertices in the lower half. After this, press X to delete and select delete vertices. With this, we are having only the upper half of the cylinder. Now press A to select all, and we'll slightly scale it up in the y-axis like this. We'll be working on creating the lower body of the treasure chest. So for this, press 3 on the numpad to go to the side view, enable the X-ray mode, and we'll be selecting these two vertices present at the bottom. Now press E to extrude them downwards in the z-axis, and then left click to finalize. After this, let's also join these selected vertices at the bottom together into a single face. And for this purpose, we need to press F on the keyboard, which is the shortcut to fill the faces. Now let's do the similar thing on the sides also. So we'll select these 4 vertices over here, and to fill the face, press F. Similarly, let's do the same thing on this side also. So with the shift key holded, I'll select these 4 vertices and press F to fill the face. Then for the upper part, we need to select this entire loop of vertices together, and to do this, hold down the Alt button and then left click over here. Now press F to fill the face, and in a similar way, I'll select this vertex loop and press F to fill the face. Now let's work on creating this metallic cage, which you can see in the reference image. But for that, we need to have some loop cuts in order to select those particular faces that are to be used for creating the metal cage. So first of all, let's add some loop cuts for the front cage. So for this, press Ctrl plus R to add a loop cut, and by using the scroll wheel, I'll increase the number of loop cuts to 3. Then left click to finalize and right click to cancel the movement. After this, I'll deselect everything, and now to give them some thickness, we need to select the individual vertex loop or the edge loops and apply the bevel tool. So to do this, hold on the Alt button and left click to select the edge loop, then press Ctrl plus B to apply the bevel tool, and if I move my cursor away, then the bevel effect will be visible on the selected vertex loop. Now left click to finalize, and now in a similar way, I'll select this vertex loop, then press Ctrl plus B to apply the bevel tool and left click to finalize. Then in the end, I'll select this one, then press Ctrl plus B to apply the bevel tool and left click to finalize. Now let's also add some loop cuts for the bottom part of the treasure chest. So for this, press Ctrl plus R to add a loop cut, then left click and we'll drag it above and left click to finalize. Similarly, let's add one more loop cut for the bottom part. So press Ctrl plus R, then left click and drag it down. After this, we have most of the face loops ready that we can use for the metal cage. However, on the side part, you can notice that we are having these 4 vertices joined together because of adding a loop cut. However, we also need to connect these 4 vertices together to create the upper part of the metallic cage. So for this purpose, we'll be connecting this vertex with this one. And to do this, we have to use a tool in Blender which is called the knife tool. To access it, press K, and you will notice that your mouse cursor will turn into a knife. And if I left click anywhere on a face, then you will notice that a green point is created, and if I take my cursor away and left click one more time, then those 2 points will get connected with a purple line. Then if I press enter, then you will notice that on those 2 points, we are having 2 new vertices created with the geometry of the original object. And this is the use of the knife tool. It allows you to connect any 2 points together, whether they're already existing within the geometry or even if you want to create them randomly on the object. So for now, I'll press Ctrl plus Z to undo this, and we'll now use the knife tool to join these 2 points together. So press K to enable the knife tool. Then first of all, I'll take this tool on that particular vertex, then left click, drag the cursor away, and we'll take this point to the other vertex. Then left click and press the enter button. And by doing this, we are now having both of these points connected with each other. Now let's do the same thing with the other side also. So press K to enable the knife tool, then select this vertex, and after that, left click to select the other one. Then press enter to confirm, and with this, both of these vertices are also connected together. Now the next thing that we'll do is to create the metallic cage on this side part. You can see in the reference image that we need to have some faces on the side part also in order to create the metallic cage. And for this, press 3 for the face select mode, then select these faces, press I to insert and left click to finalize. And with this, we are now having this particular face loop that we'll be using to create the structure of the metallic cage. Moving ahead, let's do the same thing with these faces also. So with all of them selected, press I to insert and left click. And with this, the basic structure of the treasure chest is completely ready. Now before selecting the faces for the metallic cage, I will add one more loop cut on the corners in the front side. So let's add one loop cut over here, and similarly press Ctrl plus R to add another loop cut over here. After this, press 3 for the face select mode, and we'll be selecting all the required faces. So with the Alt and the Shift key holded, select this face loop, then select this one, and in a similar way, we'll be selecting all the face loops that we'll be using for the metallic cage. Let's also select this one, then with the Alt and the Shift key holded, select this face loop also. After this, let's select the face loop on the sides also. Similarly, on the other side also, hold down the Shift and the Alt key and select this face loop. Now to convert them into a metallic cage, we'll first create a duplicate of the selected faces. So press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, then right click to cancel the movement, and now to add some thickness, press Alt plus E for the extrude menu and select extrude faces along normals. Then if I move my cursor up, then you will notice that the selected faces will begin to extrude along their respective normals. Now left click to finalize, and with this, we are having the metallic cage structure ready for our object. Now suppose you want to convert this metallic cage that we created into a separate object, and to do this, first deselect everything, and then with the cursor over any face of the metallic cage, press L, and this will select all the linked faces. Now to convert the selected geometry into a separate object, press P, and this will open up the separate menu. From here, click on selection, and this will separate the selected geometry into a new object. Now if I return back to the object mode, then you will notice that we are having the body of the treasure chest named as cylinder, and then we also have this metallic cage as a separate object in the scene collection named as cylinder.001. Now moving ahead, let's now add some detailing to our model. So although we won't be creating this handle or this lock to keep the thing simple, but we'll work on creating these details on this metal cage like these tiny spherical structures. So for creating these details, let's first add a UV sphere in the scene. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the UV sphere. Let's move it in the X-axis and place it over here. Now press tab to enter the edit mode. Now press S to scale it down and left click to finalize. After this, return back to the object mode, press 3 on the numpad, and with the UV sphere selected, press G to move it and place it over here. Press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, and we'll move it down in the Z-axis, Shift plus R. By using this shortcut, the same step will get repeated any number of times. Now go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad. Let's zoom out, and we'll now select all these UV spheres. Let's move them in the X-axis and place them over here. After this, let's scale them up slightly, and let's also place them on the other parts of the metal cage on the front side. So press Shift plus D to create a duplicate and move it in the Y-axis like this. Let's create more duplicates, place them over here. Similarly, let's do the same thing one more time, and with this, we have added some detailing on the front side of the metal cage. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for the back side also, and for this purpose, let's select all these UV spheres, but along with that, the treasure chest and the metallic cage is also selected. So to deselect them, hold on Ctrl, and then if I left click and drag my cursor like this over those objects that I want to deselect, then on releasing, those specific objects will get deselected. Now to create the duplicates, press Shift plus D, and we'll move them in the X-axis like this and left click to finalize. And with this, we have this 3D model of a treasure chest ready with some detailing added to its metal cage. Now the next thing that we'll do is to create a slight opening in the middle part of the treasure chest, which you can also see in this reference image. So for this, I'll select the cage, press tab to enter the edit mode, then we have to select this edge loop at the center. So press 2 for the edge select mode, then select the edge loop by holding Alt, and to create the opening, press Ctrl plus B to apply the bevel effect, then left click. Let's also scale it down slightly in the Z axis, and now we'll be deleting all these faces by pressing X and selecting delete faces. With this, we have created a small opening for the treasure chest. Now what we're gonna do is that we'll be opening this lid or the top part of the treasure chest. But to do that, we first need to separate out this entire geometry on the upper part of both the main body as well as the metallic cage. So for this, with the Shift key holded, I'll first select the main body, and then we'll select the treasure chest. Then with both of them selected, press tab to enter the edit mode, and now we have to select all the faces on this top part. So first step is to enable enable the X-ray mode so that we also select the faces at the back part. Then press 3 for the face select mode, and now we'll be selecting all these faces on the top side. After this, to convert them into a separate object which will be used for creating an opening, press P, and in the separate menu, click on selection. Now return back to the object mode, and with this, we are now having these two new objects created with the names cylinder.002 and the cylinder.003 for the upper body. But we'll join them together. So first of all, select both of them by holding the shift key, then press Ctrl plus J to join them together. After this, if I press R to rotate it, then you will notice that we are able to rotate the entire upper body of the treasure chest in a proper way. However, to make sure that this lid or the upper part rotates in such a way that it looks like it is actually opening, we need to have the pivot point, or basically the hinge point, or in even simpler words, the point around which the rotation will occur on this back part. And for this purpose, we'll be placing our 3D cursor at this position. And to reposition the 3D cursor, hold down the shift button and right click at a particular position. And because of this, the position of the 3D cursor will get fixed to that particular point. Now in this menu of the transform pivot point, select the 3D cursor so that the pivot point of the selected object will be changed to the 3D cursor. And now if I try to rotate the selected object in the y-axis, then you will notice that we are able to rotate it properly in such a way that it looks as if it is being opened, and that is because its pivot point is set at the position of the 3D cursor. Now to make this smooth, right click and select Shade Auto Smooth. Now let's work on creating some materials for the treasure chest. So go to the material preview mode, and then with this upper part selected, we'll open the shader editor window. So for this, click on this icon and select the shader editor. Now create a new material, and to give it a wood-like texture, we'll be using the noise texture node. So press Shift plus A, then go to texture and select the noise texture. Let's place it over here, connect the factor socket to the base color, and to control the scaling, we'll be using a texture coordinate and the vector mapping node. So press Shift plus A, then in vector, select the vector mapping node, place it over here, connect the vector socket to the vector in the noise texture, and after this, let's also add a texture coordinate node. So press Shift plus A, then go to input and select the texture coordinate node. We'll place it over here, connect the object socket to the vector in the mapping node. Now to change the scaling, I'll go to the mapping node, and in the scale value in the x-axis, we'll increase this to somewhere around 30 or 40, and after this, to give some color to this texture, we'll be adding a color ramp node. So press Shift plus A, then go to converter and select the color ramp node. We'll place it in between the noise texture and the principal BSDF. Then in the first pointer, we'll keep the color to the default black, but for the second pointer, we'll change this color from white to brown color. So reduce the brightness, and in the color wheel, choose the brown color. Now to give this texture a 3D bump effect, we'll be adding a bump node here. So press Shift plus A, then go to vector and select the bump node. Let's place it over here. Now in the noise texture, take the factor socket and connect it to the height in the bump node. Then for the output, take the normal socket and connect it to the normal of the principal BSDF. Now to create a golden material for the metal cage, press tab to enter the edit mode, then deselect everything, and with my cursor over any face of the cage, press L, and this will select all the linked faces. After this, we'll be opening the material properties and click on the plus icon to create a new material. Now with all these faces selected in the edit mode, click on the assign button, and now we'll be creating the gold material. So first of all, in the principal BSDF, let's change the base color to the yellow color, and in the metallic nature, we'll increase the strength to somewhere around 0.9, and we'll also reduce the roughness value down to 0.1. After this, we'll be applying the wood material to the lower part of the chest. So with this selected, click here and select the wood material. Similarly, select the metal cage of the lower body, then click here and select the gold material. Now to see how it looks in the rendered version, we'll go to the rendered view, and let's also change the render engine from EV to cycles. Then for a proper lighting, click here and turn off the scene lights and the scene world. And finally, this is how our treasure chest will be looking with the wood texture and this gold metal cage. But one thing that we can notice here is that the bump effect of the wood texture is very high on this side. So to reduce this effect, go to the bump node in the wood material, and let's reduce the strength to a value of 0.1. Let's also reduce the distance value to 0.1 in the bump node, and now it looks better. Moving ahead, let's also apply the golden material to these UV spheres. So I've selected one of them, and with this, click on this icon and select this golden material. Now instead of selecting all of them individually and applying the material, we'll be selecting all of them together and use a shortcut to apply the same material. So for this, let's first select all of them. With the shift key hold it, let's select the ones at here also, and once we have selected all of these UV spheres, we have to ensure that that specific UV sphere which is having the gold material already applied is to be selected at the end. After this, press Ctrl plus L for the link menu, and if I select the link materials, then that specific material will get applied to all the selected objects which was previously applied to only that UV sphere sphere which we selected at last. Let's do the same thing for this side also. So first of all, I'll select this UV sphere and will apply the gold material to it. After this, let's select all the remaining ones, and then in the end, I'll select this UV sphere, then press Ctrl plus L and select link materials. Also, with all of these selected, right click and apply shade auto smooth. And after this, we are having this wood material and the golden metallic cage ready in our scene. Now the next thing that we'll be creating are some gold coins that will fall into the treasure chest. So for modeling the coins, let's return back to the object mode, and now let's add a cylinder object for modeling the coins. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the cylinder, press tab to enter the edit mode, and we'll first scale it down in the Z axis. After this, press S to scale it down like this until we have a shape and size which looks similar to that of a coin. Then to give it a slightly curved look, we'll be using the bevel tool. So press Ctrl plus B and I will move my cursor slightly away from the coin. Now left click to finalize and press the tab key to return back to the object mode. Now right click and apply shade auto smooth. Let's also apply the gold material that we previously created to this coin. After that, to place it properly for the animation, we'll go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad, press G to move it and place it over here. Also, let's move it upwards in the Z axis. So press G and Z and place it over here. Moving ahead, we'll be creating some duplicates of this coin, since we'll be creating an animation where all such coins will interact with each other just like they do in the real world while falling into the treasure chest. So go to the top view by pressing 7 on the numpad and press Shift plus D to create a duplicate, and we'll move it in the X axis. Similarly, let's create one more duplicate and place it over here. Then to create some more duplicates, we'll be selecting all three of them together by holding the Shift button, then press Shift plus D to create duplicate and move it down in the Y axis, and to repeat this step, press Shift plus R 2 more times. And with this, we are now having a total of 12 coins added in our scene. But to create some more coins that will be placed above these, let's first go to the front view by pressing 1 on the numpad, turn on the X-ray mode by pressing Alt plus Z, and we'll now select all of these coins. After this, press Shift plus D to create a duplicate and we'll move it up in the Z axis like this. Then to repeat the same step, press Shift plus R 2 to 3 times. And with this, we are now having a much higher number of gold coins added in our scene. Now suppose I want that this gold coin should fall down and interact with the treasure chest and also with all the other coins. And to do this, we have to use a feature in Blender which is known as the rigid body physics. To enable it, with this coin selected, we have to open the physics properties. So click on this icon which has the name physics properties, and over here you have the rigid body physics. So if I left click on it, then the rigid body physics is now applied to the selected object and its settings can be controlled in the physics properties. The first and the most important setting in the rigid body physics is the type of body. If active is selected over here, it means that on playing the animation, the object on which it is applied will move in the downward direction and will show the interaction with the other rigid bodies in the scene. To understand this in much more detail, let's change this window back from the shader editor to timeline editor. After this, press the space bar to play the animation, and now you will notice that the selected object moved downwards in the Z axis, and this is because of the rigid body physics. Now let's take the pointer back to the frame number 1, and the reason why this particular coin did not interact with the treasure chest is that we have not applied any physics on the treasure chest. As a result, it is not showing any interaction with this coin. So to solve this problem, I'll select this object which is basically the lower part of the treasure chest, and yes, do note here that we have not selected the metal cage but only the main lower body. Now go to the physics properties and select the rigid body physics. But right now, if I go to the 3D viewport and press the space bar, then you notice that because of applying the rigid body physics to both the coin as well as the lower body, both are moving in the downward direction. However, we want that even though both of them are rigid bodies, but the treasure chest should remain fixed at its original position so that the coin can interact with it. And to achieve this result, with the lower body selected, go to the rigid body physics and in the type, change this to passive. Now if I go back to the 3D viewport and press the space bar to play the animation, then now we have a perfect animation created where the coin will interact properly with the treasure chest. However, if I try to change the angle, then you will notice that the coin is falling on the top surface of the selected object. And to solve this problem, we have to make some changes in the collision shape. So by default, the convex hull shape is selected, which is basically preferred for those objects having a very basic or a simple geometry. But in case of those objects having some empty space, we have to change the shape in collisions from convex hull to the mesh. Now we'll take the pointer back to the frame number 1 and press the space bar again, and now in this case, we notice that the coin will properly fall into the empty space of the treasure chest. Now to apply the same rigid body physics to the rest of the coins, let's again take the pointer back to the frame 1, and now we have to select all the coins except for the one on which the rigid body physics is already applied, because we'll be selecting it at last and then we'll copy the rigid body physics from that object. So to do this thing, press Alt plus Z to turn on the X-ray mode, and now we'll be selecting all these objects, but along with them the light is also selected, and to deselect it, simply hold on the control button and cover the light under the selection. Now let's also turn off the X-ray mode, and now do ensure that you first deselect that particular coin on which we have have already applied the rigid body physics and then select it again by holding the shift button, and yes, also ensure that this specific coin is highlighted with the yellow color and all others with the orange color. This thing implies that the object with the yellow highlight is the active object. Now go to the object menu by clicking here, then go to the rigid body, and in this menu we have this option which is the copy from active, and if I click on it, then in this case we'll have the rigid body physics applied to all the selected objects. And now if I try to play the animation again by pressing the space bar, then in this case we have all the coins falling downward and interacting with the treasure chest. However, if I take the pointer around frame number 20 or 25, then you will notice that all of them are having a uniform rotation while moving in the downward direction. However, to give them a realistic look, we must give these coins some random rotation. So to do this, let's first select all these coins again, and after this, to assign a random rotation to each of these, go to the object menu, and in the transform, here you have the option of randomize transform, and if I select it and open this tiny menu at the bottom left corner, then from here we can control the amount of randomness in the rotation values. For example, if I change the rotation in the x-axis to 30 degrees, then in this case all of these coins at the initial frame will now have a random rotation between 0 and 30 degrees. Similarly, to also give them some random rotation in the y and the z axis, go to the object menu again, and in the transform we'll be selecting the randomized transform. Then in the random x, I'll enter 0 because we have already applied the randomized rotation in the x axis last time. So in the y and the z axis, I'll change this value to 30 degrees, and with this we are now having all these coins having completely random rotations. Now to check how the animation looks, press the spacebar again. Now if you look closely at the frame number 50, then you will notice that this particular coin is passing through the upper body or the lid of the treasure chest, and this is because we have not applied the rigid body physics to this object. So to solve this problem, I'll select this main body of the upper part, then go to the physics properties and select the rigid body physics. Then in the type, change this to passive, and also in the collision shape, change this to mesh. After this, let's try to play the animation one more time, and finally this time we notice that we have a perfect animation created where this particular coin also interacted with the upper body of the treasure chest. And with this, we are now ready to finalize our scene and even create a final rendered video of the animation. So for this, let's go to the rendered view, and now let's add a plain object in the scene which will be used for the base and the background. So press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the plane. But right now we have fixed the 3D cursor position at a different location, so let's undo this by pressing Ctrl plus Z, and now to shift the 3D cursor back to the world origin, we'll use the shortcut which is to press Shift plus C. Now let's again add the plane in our scene, so press Shift plus A, then go to mesh and select the plane, press tab to enter the edit mode, and we'll scale it up 10 times, or maybe let's double it up. Now return back to the object mode, and to place it properly, I'll go to the side view by pressing 3 on the numpad, and we'll move the plane down in the Z axis. After this, let's change the angle, and for the background, let's go back to the edit mode, then press 2 for the edge select mode, and I will be selecting these two edges. Now press E to extrude them up in the Z axis, and left click to finalize. After this, I will select these two edges together, press Ctrl plus B to apply the bevel tool, and by using the scroll wheel, I'll increase the number of segments to make this section smooth. Now return back to the object mode and also apply the shade auto smooth. Now to see how the scene looks, let's go to the rendered view, and let's also change the base color of the plane. So with the plane selected, go to the material properties and create a new material. Then in the base color, I'll first reduce the brightness, and will also change the color to something like dark blue or maybe purple, and after this, press 0 on the numpad to go to the camera view. Now to adjust the camera properly, let's go to the solid mode, then click on this icon to enable the lock camera to view, and I'll now change the view according to my scene. After this, we'll be working on the lighting part for the final render. So first of all, go back to the rendered view, then click here and enable the scene lights and the scene world. Let's also disable the lock camera to view by clicking on this icon, and now we'll work on adding some lighting for this scene. So I'll select this light over here, press 7 on the numpad to go to the top view, let's zoom out, press G to move it, and place it on the front side. Now let's create a duplicate of this light, and we'll move it over here. Similarly, let's create one more duplicate for the back side and one last for this other side. Now go to the camera view again, and now we are having a very simple lighting in the scene, but to make it look even better, I'll switch to the solid mode. Now select these 4 lights by holding the shift button. Now create the duplicates, and we'll move them down in the Z axis. Let's also bring them closer, so press S to scale them down like this, and now we'll switch back to the rendered view. Then if you want, you can reduce the brightness of these lower lights to somewhere around 400 watts. Let's change the brightness for this light also, so I'll change the power to around 400 or 300 watts, and yes, you need to adjust these lights and their power or the color according to your own scene. For example, for the selected light, if I change the color to something like red, then you will notice a light shade of red being added around the selected light. Similarly, let's do the same for this light also. So I'll change the color to something like green, and then for this light, I'll change the color to the blue color. And with this, our scene is now completely ready. Now to render the animation and even save it in our PC, let's first go to the output properties by clicking on this icon, then scroll down, and we'll change the frame range in the ending value from 250 to 100. and that is because the total length of our animation is somewhere around 100 frames only, so there's no point of keeping the animation so long. Now to choose a particular location where you want to save the rendered video, you can click on the folder button in the output path and select that particular location. Then in the file format, do ensure to select this FFmpeg video, and with this we are now ready to render the animation. So click on the render button and select render animation, and then this window will appear where you can see that our animation is being rendered frame by frame. Right now the sample count is set to a very high number of 4096, but to reduce it, I'll close this window and then in the render properties go to sampling, and then in the render reduce the number of maximum samples to something like 128, and even a value of around 50 samples will work fine. Also disable the denoisy for a much better quality. After this you can render the animation, and this is the final animation that I have created. And so with this we have now arrived to the end of this chapter, and not just the chapter, we have also arrived to the end of this course. This was the final chapter which taught you about some more modeling tools which can be used to make your 3D models look much more professional. And apart from this, we also learned about some new techniques like the rigid body physics, the cloth physics in the last chapter, and a lot more. And yes, if you want to share the animation that you have created of the coins and the treasure chest by joining the Discord server, whose link is added in the description of this video. And if you wish to download the 3D model of this treasure chest and the points, or basically this entire Blender file, then you can join the Patreon, whose link is there in the description of this video. And before ending, I should also tell you that there will be a final conclusion chapter in this series titled as Chapter number 7, Final Chapter. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel, press that notification bell so that you can get timely updates about the upcoming chapters. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.